Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diane Stephanopoulos, reporting to you live from the house of famed producer and director Tim Burton. There have been many speculations on this quirky figure, and I'm here to unveil the truth. Who knows what horrors lie beyond this door?
Can I help you?
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Burton. I wasn't expecting this. What with the rumors and all.
Oh, those? I always found it fascinating with how people would judge others based off their facade, you know?
Indeed. You had me fooled.
As I do everyone else. Take a seat.
Thank you, Mr. Burton.
Tim. Call me Tim.
Tim. Well, Tim, would you mind telling us about your childhood?
Not at all. Well, I was born on August 25th, 1958 in Burbank, California, to my parents Bill and Jean Burton. My father worked for the Burbank Parks and Recreation Department, and my mother worked at a shop called Cats Plus. Burbank was and still is an outpost of Hollywood, so there was that, you know, but it had a very strong suburban feel to it, to the point where you could feel that it was anywhere USA. It had a really strong, that suburban feel that popped back up into my film Edward Scissorhands, and my parents always kept my windows closed, and I don't really know why.
And how did that make you feel?
As a child, I was very introverted, and I felt extremely alienated from that whole world, you know? I had friends, but they certainly weren't the best of my years.
Surely there was some good. No.
Oh, of course. I loved going to the cinema and watching horror films on television. I especially loved Jason and the Argonauts, and I always seem to associate with the monsters, you know? I feel that I always connected with them because they were often misperceived, which I tended to connect with, you know?
Would you say that affected your life and later your career?
Definitely. The cinema was my escape. Since I was antisocial as a child, it made it difficult for me to talk to others, and I can't finish my sentences, and that carried into my communications as an adult. But anyways, I think that without this disconnect, I would have never fallen in love with film. Mind you, I never thought, hey, I'm going to be a director, but, you know, stuff like that, like Jason and the Argonauts, really fed my love for Super 8 films.
Super 8? Isn't that a recent movie?
No. Super 8 was a stop-motion film process that my friends and I used to dabble with as kids.
Fascinating. Obviously, you weren't always the respected filmman you are today. What were some struggles that came with your career?
First off, I'd probably have to go back to my introversion as a child. The loneliness I felt scarred me in a way, with my perceptions being askew to what's acceptable in society, and so more importantly that affected my communication. After going to CalArts in 1976, I went to work for Disney. I was still young at the time, and I was working as an animator for The Fox and the Hound, and let's just say that Disney and I were a bad mix. I could see I had problems. Sometimes I'd hide in the closet for a while. Sometimes I'd sit on top of my desk. Or I'd sit under my desk. But I've gotten over that. I was weird at that stage. I was having emotional problems. I didn't know who I was.
Obviously not your brightest moment then, I presume.
Not at all. And then later in 1992, Batman Returns was released, and that didn't go over well with the critics. Batman had been such a hit that there were too many expectations, and then their critics found it to be too dark, and that the story wasn't any good because I had focused too much on the detail, the visuals, again, it was my own perceptions that dragged me down because it clashed with society, you know? And I'm sorry, but it's a guy dressing up as a bat, and no matter what anyone says, that's weird. I was really into the psychology of that and the Penguin character, but I guess that didn't necessarily come across.
In any event, you've created such movies such as Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, The Corpse Bride, and The Nightmare Before Christmas, and reworks like James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Alice in Wonderland, Planet of the Apes, and now Dark Shadows. In all, you've directed and or produced a total of 23 films, with Frankenweenie scheduled to be released soon, right?
Yes, that's right. And Frankenweenie is a full-length reimagining of my original short film.
Yes, so 24 full-length features starting in 1982 with Vincent. It's my understanding that Vincent Price was a huge inspiration for you.
For sure. I respond to his films and Edgar Allan Poe's poetry. There was something about his larger-than-life character that evoked an emotional response for me. And, you know,
On that note, how would you say you've influenced the world today?
I feel that people tend to associate me with stop animation, and I also feel like stop motion is a dying art. That's actually, there's this term, Burton-esque, and that refers to my style of something that's maybe creepy or weird but still has an emotional social core. And I'd say that my influence is Burton-esque, but it's two-pronged.
So you'd say you have two major influences on the world. How so exactly?
For starters, keeping alive the artistic aspect of different animation and using actual props and locations instead of green screen. In this age of technology, it's too easy to CGI everything, and I think other directors have picked up on how people respond to that personal style, you know? So such examples would include Coraline and now Paranorman. I'm not saying that everything I do is stop motion, because it's not, but people just assume that I did those films just because of the stop motion animation. That style that I have come to be perceived as one and the same with myself.
And the other influence?
Oh, right. The other aspect from Burton-esque is the idea. That may sound strange, but what I mean is this. I remember back when on my first rendition of Frankenweenie, it received a PG rating, and I remember thinking, why? It was thought to be too dark, and it just wasn't socially acceptable. However, through the decades, I've seen demented become not normal, but okay, you know? It's like our views are opening up, and I might humbly say my films have contributed to this movement.
Why would you say your movies in particular have such an influence?
Everyone is exposed to film, that's why. It's a big part of mainstream pop culture, which is acceptance in and of itself.
Throughout this interview, you've been coming back to the common theme of perceptions. This has shaped your life, and in turn, the lives of many others. Is this what you'd like to leave our listeners thinking about?
Yes, I should think so. Perceptions are so vital. It's scary the weight they carry. Just don't forget that. If you think differently, there's nothing wrong with you. That's okay. Human intelligence is remarkable, and so is how we think. But be you, and the rest will fall into place.
That's intriguing. Thank you for your time, Tim. It's been unique.
It's been my pleasure.
Well, you heard it here, straight from the man himself. That was Tim Burton on his life and perceptions. Make of them what you will. I'm Diane Stephanopoulos. Thank you, and have a good day.